Okay, we are live.
Hi, welcome to Titans Together, a Teen Titans video podcast. My name is Joe Pride, and this is
James Pereira.
And we are on volume 2. This is take 2 of our video. James, why don't you tell us where we are at in this story?
So it is written by Marv Wolfman and drawn by George Perez. They co-created the Titans together and did a lot of pre-work on the characters as well. Like, one of the strengths of the story, I would say, is that they really had invested and developed these characters in their minds before they started telling it. And when you read the foreword in my version by Marv Wolfman, he explains that they were DC fans and former Marvel writers, which he feels was one of the main strengths that they brought to the property. That he says that they combined the best of both worlds of Marvel and DC, which in his opinion, Marvel brings soap opera and action, whereas DC excels at plot and story, which I kind of feel are the same thing. But anyway, he felt that they merged action, soap opera, and storytelling to really create what was sort of the perfect storm. These issues, which are 9 through 16, were sort of the growing period right before Teen Titans became DC's top-selling comic book. So we're looking at sort of the golden age of new Teen Titans in a way here.
There's literally so much in these 9 issues, or not 9 through 16, and these 7 issues to go through. Like, they pack so much in these stories. It's really a testament to like the writing style back in the day, that like one issue of a comic could just include so much lore, so much world building, so much foreshadowing. Like, they mention characters in this that aren't even in this volume yet, that appear later on, which we'll get into. We're just coming off a really weird ending to the first volume. Silas Stone had just passed away, and there was kind of like a nice closure. And then there was the Day in the Life issue from volume 1, where at the very end there was a murder by Toy, and we open with another murder by Toy. In fact, in the span of 2 issues, there have been 4 murders. Harold Appleton is the latest victim. We get a little bit more about like Beast Boy's life and Beast Boy's current standing, not just within the team as a whole, but like in society. Well, how did you feel they explored Beast Boy's personality?
I think they're trying to demonstrate some greater maturity for Gar, which is nice because I feel the focus is often on his immaturity in contrast. And they introduced this character, Quester, who is sort of a rival for him in a way. He's the more straight-laced, he's an adult, and there's that, Teen Titans old versus young theme going. And so Gar has to try to rise to the occasion, I would say. It's a challenge for him to try and match this older man in business acumen and responsibility.
It seems like Quester kind of took over Dayton as a father figure, but Beast Boy really doesn't want one anymore. He spends a lot of this issue just kind of trying to run away from his responsibilities until he is next on the list of victims at the hands of the puppeteer, Mr. Jordan Weir, a former Green Lantern villain, turned straight-laced businessman for Project Prometheum and Dayton's company, who Beast Boy now runs, essentially. It was interesting that there was so much of the issue was talking about like Jordan Weir's turning of the page and how he was really a villain reformed. And when we actually meet him in the issue, he's very much like lackey for Hive.
It's sort of a villain of the week scenario, and I think in Marv Wolfman's storytelling philosophy, he explains that he thinks of it as being like a roller coaster. You need parts that go very quick and drop, which I would say this story is an example of, and then other parts can be more that sort of slow ratcheting up. So I don't think he's especially deep. It provides an opportunity for you to see the team members use their powers in different ways and interact in different ways, including the heroes fight each other, which again is not a trope I love, but in terms of that sort of showcase aspect, it's fun, I guess.
Yeah, I think it would have been interesting reading this in the 80s and like putting myself in that time period position, seeing a Green Lantern villain cross over into the Teen Titans books would have been very cool to see. Because I didn't realize that the first time I read this and the first time we tried recording this.
Legitimizes them almost in a way because this is one of the adult heroes' villains coming and they need to deal with that versus
Yeah,
her own challenge.
we get stuff about Project Prometheum, which is just kind of like a Deus Ex Machina, like can just do everything, regenerate everything, but also destroy everything. So the plans for that are like the keepsake of this issue. It's the reason Puppeteer is even involved. He's a work for hire for Hive. But amidst all of that, like political intrigue, we get really nice bonding moments for Raven and Cyborg at Mrs. Sims' school just before the A plot kind of intersects with them. Did you like this moment between the two?
I love everything with Sarah Sims. I think she adds a lot to the comic, and I kind of wish that she was there more. And for Raven and Cyborg, it's important because they've had a very fractious relationship before now. There's a sort of, I mean, there's a culturally insensitive element in the way that she criticizes how he speaks and suggests that African American vernacular is not the proper way. But there's also the way he has been calling her witch as a slur, and we see that transition to where it sort of becomes a term of affection, and that's sweet in its way, and it's nice to see their relationship grow.
Yeah, I really like I said last episode, the bonding between the characters is really just a good shining moment for these stories that I think is often overlooked later on down the line. Apologies for the first episode because I constantly refer to the Teen Titans arc that I love as beginning in 2011. It definitely started in like 2003, 2004. So like blessed or God forbid if Jeff Johns or anyone else who worked on that arc of books like watched our episode, like I got the dates all wrong. Anyways, back to the story. We get a takeover of Cyborg by the Puppeteer and really ramps up the action towards the end of the issue. It forces Raven to recruit Kid Flash back into the hero game. He wasn't really gone for that long. I think it was like an issue and a half. Meanwhile, all the Titans, one by one, single-handedly end up being possessed at the hands of Cyborg, which is, I was going to say, a Titan trope in its own right because it happens so often in the Titans books, but is just a greater comic book trope in a whole of like mind-controlled heroes fighting other heroes or heroes fighting heroes for any other kind of reason.
Mistake.
It just happens a lot in Teen Titans.
Which I guess is the soap opera element to a large degree. Like soap operas are mainly family stories, and I think that found family element is again a major harmony between New Teen Titans and the X-Men that I think represents Marv Wolfman's expression of it's a DC Marvel hybrid. It's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, for sure. Which gives us the Titans fighting the Puppeteer and kind of quickly dismantling any future advancements from him as a villain because they kind of just destroy his whole warehouse of toys very quickly. The minute he tries to slip away, they just destroy everything, which I guess is better than like killing people. Sorry, I'm just getting off of watching the Snyder Cut and like it was a chore. So Puppeteer thinks he escapes the Titans after they free themselves from his mind control, and the Hive has other plans. And as a very special cliffhanger, we find out that Slade, Deathstroke, has stolen the plans for Project Prometheum from Dayton's company, from the company that Beast Boy runs, which I thought was a great cliffhanger into the next issue. Did you like how this issue wrapped up all its loose ends?
I think so. I mean, Slade is sort of a long frame, ratchet up the story villain, so it's a good way to keep us wanting more.
Yeah, I think it's really setting up him and Hive as like the main antagonists of the story, regardless of where they are. Hive is always kind of in the background in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to issue number 10. We get more insight into Deathstroke, which I didn't really expect to see so much back in the day. I think they devoted really almost a quarter of the first part of this issue to Deathstroke and Wintergreen, and really fleshing out Deathstroke's motivations. What did you feel about like how Deathstroke approached villainy in the beginning of this?
I don't love him myself, but I think Marv Wolfman did. Said he was one of his favorite villains to write, and that he sees him as being very morally gray, which I don't know that I 100% agree with, but he does have his reasons, certainly, and I think he would, in terms of Dungeons and Dragons terms, he definitely represents more of a lawful evil villain. Like, there's a method to his madness, and you can sort of see his logic. I mean, one of his primary motivations now is vengeance for the death of his son, even though technically his son killed himself, but Deathstroke blames the Titans. And so that's his Freudian excuse for trying to kill everyone.
Yeah, trying to kill the Titans and also betray Hive. I think it's really interesting, Marv mentioning soap opera a lot in the forward that you read, because Deathstroke is like one of the anchors of just soap opera drama, because he just brings so much of it. Mm-hmm. And really these first two volumes are sowing the seeds for so much like familiar or family like drama just throughout Titans history. It's really interesting starting here at this point, because we're going to get so much of it. And I'm waiting for the point where you will get tired of it, because I fear there's going to be a point. There's going to be a point while you're reading where you're going to be like, I'm so over this Deathstroke family nonsense. Can we please move on?
Not until he does, which is never.
Right. So we get basically all of Beast Boy's origin in this issue in terms of like what turned him into what he is, like what gave him his powers, and also where he was before the New Titans, which is the Doom Patrol, which is like the next two issues is nothing but Doom Patrol. I remember reading at the end of the next issue that like these two issues itself were like devoted to the creators of the Doom Patrol. So it's really cool to see Marv Wolfman and George Perez pay respects to writers and artists that created the characters they're using in their toy box right now. We find out that Robot Man, the only other surviving member of the Doom Patrol, is tracking Dayton, one of the other characters in that roster, and Madame Rouge, the next villain. And we find all about this while Beast Boy and Cyborg are kind of bonding together. And this is like the first time we see them like form such a connection. Mm-hmm. There is a mention of like a time jump between issues, that like every issue there's like 2 weeks in between, basically, which is interesting because comic books nowadays, it's just like boom, 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 like main event into main event into main event. There's like no time jump in between usually. Did you like this bonding between them that really kind of like solidifies them as like the best friend group?
Absolutely. I think I prefer the sort of more leisurely cadence implied by the story, and the way that you get these character beats that I think is kind of lacking in modern comic story, where it's more, you know, we gotta go, boom, boom. I think one of the nice things also for me is that since the cartoon was my introduction, the friendship of Cyborg Beast Boy is one of the core relationships. And so it's nice to see that emerge here for the first time. And with the Doom Patrol, I again think there's sort of that quote legitimizing element where they're bringing in adult heroes from other stories. And so having the guest starring the Doom Patrol sort of cements the idea that Titans are the real deal themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see, like, I mean, they mentioned the Doom Patrol in the animated series, but really to kind of hone in on like where Beast Boy was before this gives the issues like a sense of history. And one of my favorite aspects of the Teen Titans is just the amount of legacy that each character holds, no matter what iteration it is. One of the characters is from something before it, and like that amount of world building just for a property is so rich and so enlightening. Like, definitely one of my favorite aspects of the Teen Titans as a whole. And I think it's really unique to them as a group. So back to the story. After we have this great bonding moment, we get kind of a moment where Sims, unfortunately, is captured by who we already kind of know. It's Deathstroke planning his next scheme, which gives us Starfire versus Deathstroke, which I think you might have loved. I have an inkling.
Of course. I mean, I love everything with Starfire. I love that she has that dichotomy of love, but also brutality. And this is really one of her first chances to fully unleash. I mean, it will be a long running thing with Robin trying to sort of rein her in, I think. But with Deathstroke, it's okay.
Yeah, she fucked him up. And he makes a quick getaway. But in that moment, I want to highlight that she mentions her family drama by way of Ryander and her sister, who we will see next volume. So that's interesting to see them sow the seeds for something like 7, 8 issues away right here in issue 10, which I'm sure you enjoyed.
Yeah, more family drama. Bring it on.
We get the Prometheum auction, which is held by Deathstroke and is kind of like Deathstroke's way of solving 2 birds with 1 Prometheum bomb, where he is basically blackmailing Hive into showing up to pay for something that he stole that they wanted, and then holding Sarah hostage to get the Titans to come to save her. Really interesting tactical steps from Deathstroke. I don't know if I would have done it, but as a villain, he definitely is smarter than me in some aspects, I guess.
It's a great Thanatos gambit where he has everything planned out. He's manipulating everyone. I like that about Deathstroke. It again, I think, helps embody that idea of he's the established, orderly adult figure, and you see adults versus teens played out. And he's sort of a dark father figure, Darth Vader sort of aspect to the Titans in a way.
Yeah,
especially Tara once she is introduced.
In
very squicky, abusive ways.
When we get to Tara, who's arguably one of my favorite characters, it's going to be crazy, especially as it relates to Deathstroke and what his motivations are and how far he's willing to go to be a villain and just to make sure these characters' lives are ruined. So Sarah Sims is saved, thankfully. The Teen Titans end up playing a giant ruse, knowing that Deathstroke was kind of just making steps all along. And this Prometheum bomb he was going to use to kill the Titans ended up being fake. And then they spent a whole page explaining it. It kind of just ends up with the Hive killing all of the competition. So any terrorist that was there, offed by the Hive. But then Deathstroke's betrayal of the Hive to make sure he kept everything in his advantage. It just ended up like where everyone's killing everybody except for the Titans, who are just like played a massive like magic trick to escape and save Sarah. How did you think that issue end?
I mean, with the cliffhanger this time being Gar's life hanging in the balance is again very soap opera, but I mean, it raises the stakes. It keeps you going.
It's interesting to see like Starfire at the beginning of the issue taking Deathstroke on and trying to like use force to win and still getting away, Deathstroke, and then Beast Boy fighting Deathstroke on his own turf and kind of getting owned because Deathstroke is smarter. Like Beast Boy doesn't have the tactical advantage of having warlord training. He is literally just a younger-ish superhero who can shapeshift. So it was kind of crushing to see Deathstroke just completely win. Like there was no doubt about it. Which was a great cliffhanger at the end. We also get another Titans Go pseudo quote before we move on to issue 11. This time we have Titans - let's move. Again, not quite Titans Go, not quite Titans Together, but you know, we're getting there, baby steps. This is still like very much like season 1 RuPaul of like, bring back my girls, except not. So on to issue 11. Their only hope of saving Beast Boy is on Themyscira, which is really great for me because I love Amazons. And their hope of saving him is the Purple Ray. What did you think about this plan of saving Beast Boy's life?
I mean, I think this is a favorite issue for both of us, but I love the old school pseudo Z-Roost Amazon technology, so the Purple Ray is great. It's pre-Perez reboot of Wonder Woman, so you get to see the really old school sort of William Moulton Marston Themyscira, but it also shows you a lot of the roots of what Perez will then reinterpret in his own style, especially with the way Marv Wolfman plays up the mythology in this issue. You then see that love of mythology come through in the Perez Wonder Woman as well.
I mean, when it comes to Amazons, I think that we both have a great affinity for these characters, minus the fact that Hippolyta is blonde, which is a great Perez change that I like, because I do not like blonde Hippolyta. I don't know why. I think it's just because I like her and Diana looking alike in some capacity.
There's that.
We kind of get more hints to Donna's mysterious origins, because in the next issue, it's kind of more declarative about who she is as a hero and as a Amazon. But in this one, Hippolyta likes to call her daughter very declaratively. And it's like, is she actually your daughter or is she not? Does that make her a full-fledged Amazon? It'll be really interesting. There is a full issue devoted to like explaining her origins later down the line. So it's crazy to see like conflicting ideologies about who Donna Troy is. And to know that that's going to be fully explained later is really cool, especially for somebody who is such a Donna Troy fan. But a part of the caveat of going to Themyscira is the fact that the boys can't step foot on the island
and aren't allowed to set foot on Themyscira, and that makes this sort of a girls get it done issue, which I find a lot of fun. I love that you get to see the focus put on Donna and Raven and Corey, and there's that aspect of their sliding scale of violence and pacifism and emotional suppression versus emotional volatility, and it's really fun to see that all play out together, and just really fun also to see them get to be with the Amazons in this. I hate to use the term girl power. I mean, they feel sort of condescending, but I like the women's empowerment angle. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's cool to see that like every character has their own dichotomy and own view on like what heroism is and what it means to be a woman in a hero landscape. Amidst them trying to save Beast Boy's life, Hyperion, the Titan, like not literal, but mythological Titan, is escaping Tartarus, which gives us this very massive Greek myth, just lore dump of like, this is real. The Greek myth is established as canon in the DC universe. He returns to the surface world just as they're trying to revive Beast Boy using the sun and the Purple Ray. And this kind of KOs Donna Troy for the rest of the issue, because she comes up and tries to stop Hyperion from siphoning power from the sun, and he basically mind controls her into being his wife and lover against her wishes, in hopes that it'll help him in his conquest of the new world and against the gods, the old gods, his children. What did you think about this whole technique for trying to take over the world?
I mean, I think going to myth is a logical turn when dealing with Amazon. His plans to take over the world don't make a lot of sense. They're very comic booky, but the way that he charm persons Donna and plays out sort of that narrative of a man controlling and abusing a woman, and the conflict that then creates between her and other women who are trying to save her, I think that's a very rich amount of material to mine, and I think this story really benefits from that, whether or not it's as sensitive as we would like it to be today or not. I mean, there's an exploitative element to it, certainly, and it's meant to be uncomfortable, and so it is.
Right. I mean, like, outside of the costume change that she gets, which isn't even that good, like, it's crushing to see her play out a mind-controlled role, kind of, I think, how you find certain parts of Jean Grey's mind control era not to be the most pleasant. But it's really good in this instance for me to have like the Amazons and Starfire and Raven there to kind of like counteract everything going on and be like, wait a minute, this is not okay. She needs to be saved. Like, regardless of like how evil the Titans' intentions are, how evil Hyperion's intentions are, they want Donna back first and foremost, because I think Raven immediately says like something's not right. Like she isn't of sound mind or something exactly. So Hyperion returns to Tartarus and releases the rest of the Titans, which we don't need to get into their names. I think anyone who has taken a world history class knows many of these characters. They're just all basically like the gods from Greek mythology, but like the parent version of them. It kind of explains like the parent versus children theme is like really cemented home here as it applies to the Titans and the gods.
And it's a massive generational conflict. I know it wasn't intended that way at the time, but it also plays out a major criticism of patriarchy, I would say, in the way that Zeus and Kronos and Uranus and Hyperion all have this constant "I must kill my father and take his place" thing going on. The Oedipal elements of Greek mythology really show you how a society that only empowers and listens to men is very prone to those violent and dominating tropes. And so again, that's part of what I think is so very, very satisfying to see it be Raven and Corey and the Amazons who get to finally liberate people from this never-ending cycle.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because at the end of the issue, a certain god is the cliffhanger, who turns out to be Athena, moving into issue 12. It's cool to see like Athena not necessarily taking the forefront battle wise, but her being smart enough to know like, I'm going to go to the Amazons and to Starfire and to Raven to kind of balance the scale and send somebody else in to stop the fighting, which really gives us some great moments talking again about generational war. Raven makes it poignant. Observation is like, this what history is doomed to be, is this never ending fight of the parents versus the kids, which like if you keep reading Titans, it is. Sorry to burst the bubble, Raven. We get the Titans versus the gods, where the gods are quickly subdued basically at the hands of the old great ones, which gives us some great fight scenes. I know I commented about this when we tried to record this the first time, but I must reiterate that like George Perez's artwork is just stunning. Like the way it goes from one era or one angle of the fight to another while still acknowledging that the fight is still happening in the background. Like it's just so masterfully done. And I think 80s artwork isn't really appreciated a lot nowadays. So like to shine a light on that, I think is going to be one of my favorite parts of having this podcast, that like people will go back and like reread these yeah, sure, kind of dated stories, but like you have to understand like the context of the history, where it came from, and how really like how special it is, like the ability these artists and writers had back in the day.
When we talk about the Snyder Cut, I think the way that George paces out the panels, there's that very sort of, you see the quick cuts and the slow-mo, and the way he's really going off playing with light and fire and smoke and darkness. Yeah. It's
definitely. We get more focus about like the gods' intention. We get the Amazons finally showing up to Olympus to take on the gods and the Titans and kind of stop the fighting in general, because they do mention that it is having like real world effects outside of the battle, because they are gods fighting. It's going to have like implications everywhere else on the planet. And amidst this, they keep kind of calling Donna mortal, which is strange. And again, like we're going to get a whole issue devoted to explaining what Donna is in the Greek mythology landscape and the Titans landscape of who she is. So it's cool to see that kind of like conflicting with the previous issue. Again, we get like the parent versus children theme really nailing home this issue. They kind of mention, because the Titans do end up losing. Hello, it's Corey and Raven versus the Titans, which is cool to like see a scale of the power set. So they end up losing. And they kind of phrase Tartarus as like a makeshift heaven from now on. How do you feel about this kind of retconning of what Tartarus is supposed to be versus what it is in DC canon now?
I mean, I like it. I think it sort of offers a restorative justice option. I mean, versus Tartarus as being a place of imprisonment and torment.
A metaphor for hell,
It's certainly
basically.
nice to have a lighter, fluffier version, I think.
They kind of break Donna of this mind control, and it kind of breaks her mentally, causing her to leave, which gives us 2 epilogues in the book in 1 page, which was a lot. I remember reading it. I'm like, epilogue 1? There's supposed to be like only 1 of these. What do you mean? So epilogue 1 is Donna kind of like returning to Terry. And I know you're not the biggest fan, but I do like his supportive like base for her to go to when she's in need, especially right now where she's like, I don't want anything else but a hug, and Terry's there not to question any kind of motivation, just to like be there as like the loving partner they kind of write him to be.
It plays up his alleged strengths.
Yes. And then we get epilogue 2, which is Beast Boy's return with a caveat, which gives us issue 13 and our next Titan trope, which is the Titan betrayal. Oftentimes within Titan's lore, there is going to be one member of the team who goes bad for whatever reason and kind of fucks shit up and kind of has a moment of reckoning. And for Beast Boy, I think he has the fastest like heel turn and then revert ever, which was interesting because when I read this, I always thought Tara was the first character to kind of like betray the team. But I think she's the first character to betray the team in a long scale, kind of like gradual betrayal, whereas Beast Boy was brought back to life not the most mentally intact. So he attacks a lot of the Amazons. He destroys the Purple Ray facility. What did you think of Beast Boy's return? I mean, we knew it was inevitable.
I mean, it's very dramatic, and it gives us another intra-family conflict. And I mean, it's not the most sensitive to mental health, I guess. It reminds me a lot of World of Warcraft in that it's like, suddenly he is crazy and we must fight. But in terms of, hey, comics, it gives us some very cool action. Evil Beast Boy exploits his powers in much more dramatic ways than normal Beast Boy typically does. He
and then
becomes a
all
dinosaur.
of the women have to take him down.
Yeah.
The beginning of the issue kind of focuses on Donna's trauma and her trying to kind of like get over all of that. Again, with Terry at her side as this complete support system. There's never a mention of like I won't ever see Terry try to gaslight somebody in my mind, like, or manipulate or kind of like judge Donna for anything that's happened to her. And he's completely supportive of like her entire career choice and life path.
I mean, if I'm unkind and talk about daddy issues, but in terms of a daddy relationship and the generational ideas Teen Titans plays with, an older man in an ideal scenario offers support and a firm basis. And if it's not abusive, the ability for you to grow and develop and make your own decisions as well. So it is good that Donna has someone she can turn to. I wish it were more Corey and Raven overall. And again, with comics, the thing I'll always point out is that, in fact, we don't get enough time with her trauma. Like, it's there, but she'll also recover much quicker than someone would in real life. And I would like to see that slow story Ratchet deal with things emotionally a bit more.
Yeah. I'd say when she's taking on the thugs in this issue and then like has the realization that like her life could be more than just a trauma response, it is super jarring and super fast, but then it switches to Corey fighting with the Amazons, which is also really great to see because Corey just feels like the most at home on Themyscira. I don't know how often they visit the Amazons in the Titans books going forward, but like in my headcanon, I feel like she spends many a weekend there just kind of showing all of the Amazons up in these contests. I have a feeling she's been like banned from entering contests because they want to have like an even playing field, which I'm sure you enjoyed watching her just like feel in her element. Like it was really cool to see and really well written. But after that, we kind of get the boys issue, which is them trying to kind of finish what Beast Boy was starting before he was almost killed, which is finding Robot Man, finding Dayton, figuring out what's going on with Madame Rouge. Amidst this, we get more Kid Flash dilemma, which I might make its own trope at this point because he's still conflicted about being a hero or not, which is kind of like his entire personality. But just as that happens, they find Robot Man. He kind of leads them to Madame Rouge, and instead of finding the villains, they find Dayton. What did you think about this whole process and introducing Robot Man as a full-fledged kind of ally to the Titans?
I mean, it again plays with our generational aspects. These are our good father figures, in theory, quotes good, because there is still, again, conflict. They aren't just, being family doesn't mean everything's perfect. It means that there's endless conflict. You may unite against a greater threat, but everyone has their own emotional angles. And I think Madame Rouge, again, with the mental health aspect, introducing her is very interesting for that little bit we get to see of the idea that she has a villainous literal alter ego, mental alter. And so in terms of the baggage she has with Beast Boy and the way they sort of get to resolve it in an awkward and problematic way is nice and interesting as well.
Right. I mean, it's cool to see Robot Man kind of have that bonding moment with Cyborg because they are two men of metal. And as they find Dayton, which like we all knew he was going to be the like sleeper spy that Madame Rouge kind of like planned all along, we are introduced to General Zal and his army and this underground city, which is cool to see George Perez really get to play with setting. Another great strength of his artwork is just like, he makes it look like a city. It's sprawling. The robots are very like Rocket Man futuresque and all red, which is like the signifier for like the Nazis and like what General Zal's MO is all about. That gives us issue 14, which is finally the Titans reunion. We've had two issues of them apart. Along with this, we get some really nice moments all within like 2 pages of them kind of like talking and squashing either conflict or rebonding together. Raven kind of admits to Wally that what she did to get him to be a part of the Titans is wrong, and that she does acknowledge that it was problematic and that she's fully taking accountability and really sorry for it. Juxtaposed to the Doom Patrol reunion, which is Dayton, Beast Boy, and Robot Man, which was really nice to see because I think it was a moment of happiness for Beast Boy that we hadn't seen in a couple issues. Did you like this exchange before the eventual like sleeper spy was activated?
I mean, it's about family and them working out that baggage, daddy issues are at play. And I think that, I guess, idea, especially as a teenager, I think there's the element in which you feel betrayed by your parents to a degree is, I think, common to everyone, just in the way that, as children, we're given a softer, gentler version. Well, most people as children are given a softer, gentler version of the world. And then adulthood is more shattering those illusions. And there can be a lot of anger and resentment. And I forget who I remember the quote from, but it's something about becoming an adult includes learning to forgive your parents for not being perfect. And I think that's sort of what this enacts.
Yeah, there's a lot of like really great, again, like really great bonding between all the characters for just a moment before Dayton slips into his crazy superhero suit, which they comment on themselves as being crazy looking. When we get to Shiger Week, he's definitely going to be a point of discussion. He dons his superhero outfit and betrays the team and is completely under Madame Rouge's control. But they kind of take care of him pretty easily. I mean,
much more than you would think, powerful, mind-controlling telepath.
Yeah, it sets him up to be a lot more powerful than he actually is because they kind of solve it in like a page. We get Zandia and more Doom Patrol origins and their deaths that like they literally almost all died to further protect humanity, which was really interesting to see. The floating city kind of erupts. Zandia, this kind of entirely inhabited criminal setting, is holstered into the air by Madame Rouge and General Zal, where the Titans kind of fight these soldiers. There's some great sprawling action scenes. Beast Boy is kind of driven by rage and goes out on his own, where I think that's kind of like the linchpin of the team, because the team ends up losing and getting captured again. I think because of Beast Boy's brash decision making. But for him, it leads him to the Brotherhood of Evil, which is really cool to see. Another Doom Patrol mainstay, which I think throughout the years of reading, they kind of integrate those villains into the Titans lore a lot more. So it's cool to see that introduction here right before issue 15. So upon reading this for the first time, what did you think of the Brotherhood of Evil as like the cliffhanger into the issue 15?
I'll always comment on problematic elements. Hungen makes things very awkward in a lot of ways.
Awkward and makes no sense.
But I think I would consider them an upgrade over what was it, Sinister Six? No, that's a Spider-Man.
Fearsome 5.
Fearsome 5. There we go. I think that, again, the sort of legacy aspect of it's a sort of graduation in a way. They were Doom Patrol villains, now they become Titans villains, shows the strength of the Titans. And I think that they provide foils for the Titans in a very interesting way. There's the sort of matchup quality to it.
Yeah. So the Titans are captured and put into this like de-evolutionary container thing, which seems to affect everybody but Robot Man. A very interesting way of disposing with heroes other than just killing them, but whatever.
General Zal's, convenient because it's long
General
and slow.
Zal's narcissism kind of supersedes his sociopathic tendencies, I guess. Like he wants them to die. He just wants it to look cool while it's happening. And then we have a team up between Beast Boy and the Brotherhood of Evil as a means of taking out the city and as a means of squashing Madame Rouge and General Zal's plans. What did you think of this like reluctancy Beast Boy had? And while I understand it, it's like, well, what is he supposed to do in that position? Because he tried to fight the Brotherhood and lost.
It's a lot of development for Beast Boy. Again, I think this element of growth, and we just saw him try to rage out and fail, and we saw him try to take the path of pure aggression and fail. And so he needs to learn more about compromise and teamwork, and compromise even to the point of compromising his morality and his traumatic history with these characters. So it's a very emotionally rich and it's a growth moment for him.
The reluctancy that he has to team up with them, paired with like him realizing if I do, it'll at least get me to the team and it'll at least have a means to an end, was really interesting to see that like gray area applied to such an old comic where stuff is generally black and white. We learned about like General Zal's idea of villainy versus Madame Rouge's, and kind of see that Madame Rouge isn't necessarily a villain in her own choosing. She's a villain at the hands of Monsieur Mala and the Brain, because they basically made her into what she is, which gives us the good like contemplative like idea of what it means to be a villain right before the Brotherhood interject and it turns into just outright chaos. There's just soldiers everywhere, Titans finally freed by Robot Man, thankfully. There's some great pairings between villains themselves fighting. Everyone's kind of like sequestered into their own corner of the battlefield.
But there's also a tag team aspect. Like it really plays up the action strengths that Wolfman was talking about and that Perez has in the way you mentioned, like these changing angles and quick cuts. It's a very exciting comic to read.
Yeah, I mean, we got some pairings that I didn't realize I wanted to see, like Raven and Monsieur Mala having a strange bonding moment where she saves him and he is just like completely affectionate and over the moon for her, which is so out of character to see for a villain, to show like there is an aspect of humanity within this character who is otherwise like pure evil, because she did save his life. Amidst this, we do get Zal's quick death because he chooses to shoot at a robot knowing it'll kill him. Again, Zal's narcissism knows no bounds, because he tried to kill the Titans in his own like flavorful way, but also tried to kill himself in his own flavorful way and succeeded. because shooting the bullets at Robot Man deflected into himself, thus killing him and wiping away, I think, probably the least interesting villain of the bunch. I mean, we have so many here in this sprawling setup, and Zal is just taken out like that because, I mean, really, he's just a Nazi. Like, you're just a bigot. So I think it was particularly fitting.
Yeah.
And then we get the fight scene between Madame Rouge and Beast Boy, where in a moment of rage, Beast Boy kind of catapults her into a part of the floating city that ends up killing her. So he did kill her, but then didn't, because right before her death, she kind of like pleads with Beast Boy not to grieve and apologizes for her actions and says that like she was a product of the brain's doing.
I will open with my criticism of I don't feel like there's enough weight and time overall given to trauma, but it's very intense. They're working with so much. I want to point out the degree to which the Brain and Monsieur Mala are a gay couple, eventually confirmed. And so there's something I think very, very interesting about the sort of marginalization and abuse pileup. Hurt people. And so they've created a monster out of Madame Rouge. She's creating a monster out of Beast Boy in terms of the sort of rage and, I mean, the outright violent killing, but it's an accident and she forgives him and she wants to die, so it's okay. I mean, they're trying very hard to thread a needle of morality for Gar to do this. That doesn't necessarily work, but there's a lot going on. And I think that's what definitely appeals to people. It's very high stakes, very high emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, like you mentioned the hurt people aspect of the story, that in her last moments, she wants to kind of stop that and say like, you know, this is the way it is. And I'm kind of happy it's ending this way. Maybe because she knew that like she was going to go farther in her actions and not be able to go back. But it's such a thin veiled like pass for Gar that like, okay, you you did kill Madame Rouge, which he does suffer implications for later on. And by later on, I mean like way to when I was reading around the 2000s. Like there are implications for that. So that's interesting to see it start here. So after her death, the floating city is kind of destroyed. I don't think so. Everyone on the city was a villain, I guess. And so it's okay that the city was destroyed. I feel like this is Sokovia in the MCU all over again. We'll give it a pass. The Brotherhood escaped. They kind of get like a 10-second head start from the Titans, which I'm like, why? Just capture them then and there. But I think everyone's kind of tired of fighting at this point. And there's a really nice moment of Beast Boy and the Doom Patrol finding a moment of peace and acceptance for the fact that half of their team is just gone.
I mean, I think it's a strong ending. It's a nice beat to wrap things up and give us that sort of pause and element of closure in terms of the sort of inheritance and generational aspects. This is closing a loop for Gar and help. Well, it opens a can of worms on one end and then nicely dovetails something shut on the other. So it's a very mixed ending, I guess, in that aspect. But it's nice in that regard that it's not all traumatic for him. There's the elements of trauma and abuse, but then also the restoration and redemption. So I like the mix.
Yeah, I really liked the panel of them all holding hands. It was a really nice moment of solace with their former teammates behind them. I don't know if it's going to take away when we see those characters come back to life. Like, spoiler alert, everyone knows the Doom Patrol. They have had like so many different teams. We know they come back to life at some point. So it'll be interesting to reflect on it then versus now. But then we get another issue 16, our last one, which again, I don't understand how these volumes are split up, because this feels like I'm like deja vu, because like last episode of the first volume, issue 8 was such a weird tacked on like little nugget. I feel like that's issue 16 all over again with different subject matter. And I know you have thoughts on it because this introduces Franklin, the first love interest of Starfire, apparently. I know. It's not a surprise that he was basically like retconned out of the canon, because I didn't know this dude from the get. Like, First
It's
time
very
reading this,
sudden.
I'm like, who's Franklin? Who is this? Never heard of this person before in my life. If you want to take the lead on this issue.
I mean, all right, so Starfire, very impromptu, I would say, gets a boyfriend. Um, and I mean, I find it awkward and annoying, but if I'm being honest, I think it is being true to her character. It's again showing us that aspect of she's so emotionally deep and free that she can meet someone and fall in love like that. And it will be a very true, pure, extreme love. Um, and so, in that regard, it also, I think, plays out a subtle Romeo and Juliet aspect of violent passions have violent ends. It's a story about emotional volatility and going to extremes. And it, in terms of the idea that the girls exist on an axis, it pits Corey and Donna against each other in terms of that violence versus peace aspect. Donna has to be the sort of peacekeeper holding Corey back. And I don't necessarily agree with the morality of we must always forgive people and be the bigger person, but that's very true to 80s heroism, especially. And so
Yeah.
uh,
I
Donna is
could
the
hear
brighter
you
hero.
hiding your bias about your anger about Franklin, because no one likes Franklin. I don't like Franklin. The minute he turned out to be a Hive sleeper agent, I was like, great.
Mm.
Can he die now?
I mean, but he has a heart of gold, allegedly, right? He was doing it just for the money, and
True.
he truly does come to love Corey, we're told, and he regrets his actions. And it's meant to be sort of one of those tragic sacrificial deaths where he didn't want it to be this way. So I don't love him, certainly, and he's kind of a throwaway
You're
character,
like, he's
but
so low on like the Starfire love interest totem pole.
I mean, who could compare to Dick? But
Honestly, if for Starfire, hello. So amidst this issue of crazy, passionate love for Starfire and Franklin, you get some really nice, again, character moments. Raven goes to college at Wally, and they get really nice bonding moments there, where
mhm.
Wally kind of contemplates like the love I have for this woman. Was it all, or this girl? They're both teenagers, I guess. This love I have for this other character, is it earned, knowing that it wasn't earned to begin with? I never really shipped them to begin with when I did start
Yeah.
reading Teen Titans. So this is crazy to see that like this was one of the like pairings to start off the team. I'm just like, no,
I
can
mean, I
Iris
would
come in?
read in terms of, I like applying sexualities to characters, but I would consider Raven truly to be an asexual or a lesbian or perhaps a romantic but asexual lesbian in somewhere in that realm. I don't buy her loving Wally in the first place. It's weird to
No,
me.
and I
I
don't
don't
even
feel
think
it.
she kind of, I think she goes with him to college out of like a need to like, again, be more integrated into society, not necessarily a means for affection. Just like I think her getting him to fall in love with her wasn't necessarily like a means of true affection. It was a means of like getting the team together,
Mhm.
regardless of how appropriate or not it was. We do get a lot of Donna and Dick Grayson solving crimes and being a cool duo. It really shows that they were like the core aspect of the golden age,
Mhm.
in my opinion, because I thought they worked well together in this issue. I think Donna is such a level-headed character and such a grounded just person, regardless of like all the trauma she went through. She can still have this strong head on her shoulders that like when other writers take her and turn her into something different, here's looking at you, New 52 and Rebirth, it just completely turns me off. I hate it. I hate it
Mhm.
so much. I love this Donna, regardless of like, I mean, I wouldn't forgive Hive either to like give a point to Starfire, but Donna is there as like this great voice of reason, and like in the middle of
Mhm.
Raven's passivity and Starfire's just like need to like lead with violence in a way. Donna is that great middle point, that great like I'm the true like medium of these two like very extremes. Really like Starfire does meet Franklin through the modeling that she does for Donna, and it's quickly found out that Franklin is a spy from Hive as a means of getting money, like you said. but they fall so deeply enough so fast that he is ready to lose it all, and he does, to make sure that Starfire is okay. Which, like you said, does bring out this great fight scene between Donna and Starfire, this inner team conflict that I hope is continued into the next couple issues between conflicting ideologies. That was really cool to see, because a lot of the times the heroes fighting heroes aspect is done in a very like blasé way, and it's all of like miscommunication, and it's not necessarily done with like such a grounded framework. Like, no, these two characters are fighting for two very solid conflicting ideologies. So I really did appreciate that on the point of the writers. Like, I thought that it was really well done. And like, if you're going to do heroes versus heroes, I really prefer this means of it.
Absolutely.
The Hive end up killing the Hive member that killed Franklin, because that was never their plan. And that kind of ends this volume of craziness of so much. Like, they just pack so much into these issues. It's crazy. And I know like our episodes are going to get strategically shorter, because the further down the line we get with comic books, the more short the books are, and the less stuff they pack in here. It's just crazy that like this had so much foundation building stuff for Titans lore, again, like volume 1, and it'll continue into volume 3. So before we get into that, we can start Chic or Weak little segment.
You have the list?
I do.
First
I have this
is
exhaustive list of characters, because there are just so many to go through. So it'll kind of be a lightning round for certain ones, starting with the gods and the Titans. They all kind of had a specific flavor of character, which was Wonder Bread White and Greek mythology regalia. I personally think it's weak, given I think for me, I kind of grew up with like the animated Hercules aspect of gods, that they were all like a certain color, and that they all kind of like adhered to Greek clothing, but like in a fantastical way. I love George Perez's costume design, but for Greek mythology, like I feel like they could have went the extra step and like made something more creative.
I think for me, I was obsessed with Greek mythology as a child, primarily out of my mom giving me Delaire's Greek Myths, which provides a very eerily similar homogenized white Grecian template. So for me, it feels very nostalgic. It's kind of like eating peanut butter and jelly. But I think if you compare it to more contemporary visions of divinity, the idea that we could have multicultural pantheon, it doesn't hold up. I think in terms of the 80s, it has some strong design elements. I mean, George found colors for each of them and accessories for each of them that kind of help you identify immediately, this is who this is and this is what they are about. And that's, I think, chic element. But no, I'd agree that by today's standards, it's kind of flat Pepsi.
Yeah, Donna's God outfit, which I think is in line with what we just said. I think weak again. She has so many better outfits, especially ones designed by George Perez too. That this mind-controlled symbol of her oppression is just like me. It's a bathrobe. I got it.
I mean,
it's a
I
weak
guess
for me.
From that element, in the idea that you could think it's what a man forces a woman to dress up in as sort of his puppet scenario, it plays that out. I don't know if it's the pandemic speaking to me, but I do sort of want to just be wearing something like this on a beach right now, personally. But that speaks maybe more towards my own psychosexual development than rules of fashion. So no, this can be weak.
This can be weak. We get Robot Man in his robot Speedo, which I think I haven't seen the HBO Max series, but I do like what they give him to wear in that. Regardless of like, I know they put him in clothes because it's a TV show with limitations of being a TV show. So I like the Speedo. I like what they do in the HBO Max show. I think because the character does end up having this costume for like his entire existence, I have to give it a chic off of that. What do you think?
I mean, I think I'll disagree with you again. I think the Robo Speedo, I mean, it is classic. It is, how he's usually depicted, but especially in comparing it to contemporary again, I think the HBO Max show and the way they give him that sort of a little dated 80s metal look. I think
Hmm.
that really plays up the character well and the idea of, especially within the context of the TV show, I guess, who he is and the era he identifies with. And I just think that's a much stronger design. So in comparison, the 80s one becomes weak.
Oh
But
no. So we get Dayton in his superhero outfit, and it is atrocious. I have seen so
Mhm.
many better costumes with a blue and yellow color scheme. And I know they comment about it in the book itself, but
Yeah,
like really to nail home, like that costume is so bad. What is that headpiece? Why does he have a cape? There's no like point of like reference or main focal point for the costume outside
there's
of the color scheme.
stars and lightning. I
It is a week. I think in especially like George Perez era, it's gonna go down in my brain like as like the weakest costume I've ever seen in this era. It's so bad.
that.
We get the Brotherhood of Evil. So
Mhm.
quick round, Monster Mall on the brain, iconic. They don't really
Yeah,
change much. It's a chic. Uh, we get Warp again. His costume doesn't really change, even into the animated series where he's featured for a great episode. It is like this monochromatic gold, like futuristic robot man level of like really solid character design. So for me, it's a chic.
sure.
We get Phobia. Again, her costume kind of stands the test of time. I haven't seen her newest iterations as a character within the DC canon, but when I was reading, she had the same exact costume.
It gives me
Um,
Maleficent vibes, I would
yeah,
say. There's a
very.
very classic villainess. Also, I would say maybe even more than Maleficent, Snow White's evil queen is kind of in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a very dramatic. I feel like drag queens would eat this for breakfast. So it's
Yeah,
good.
again, Demand a Martini, like you have to cosplay this character.
Yes, yes, please. Phobia.
So it's a chic. Plasmus is just a giant ball of goo. So I don't think in a speedo though.
Yeah.
In a speedo,
I
I think
mean, generic monster man. I think he works in terms of balancing the team, though. I think
yeah.
possibly George sat there being like, okay, what shapes, colors, what, but
I think because you can't really do much with him, it has to be a chic. And then we get Hongan, which we can just leave it weak across the board. I don't even
I don't know
doesn't
that
need
there's a
even need discussion.
reference for this. I don't, it seems just made up and odd, like a lot of the elements of his character.
Yeah,
Awkward.
just weak across the board. We get Zal, who's literally just a Nazi. So I mean, by all
Just a
extension of the
Nazi.
word, it's a Nazi. Madame Rouge, who I love her design.
I
Um,
mean, it's powerful. You have the big shoulder pads, you have the armored elements. It's very 80s, would
very
be one of
80s.
my knocks. And again, I just find it incredibly weird that her villain name is Madame Rouge and red is not incorporated.
Until
But
the animated series, which, does it justice, I'd say, in terms of your color scheme requirements. Um, so for me, it's a chic.
I'll give it to her, especially within the context of the 80s.
I'm like, this is going to be the most conflicted episode of Chic or Week
I
for
mean, as
us.
opposed to giving her like a shimmer or some sort of no, okay, this is chic.
Yeah, like I think the worst one last episode was Shimmer. This one I think definitely goes to like Hongan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oy. Well, I mean, next up is Puppeteer, uh, which is, I mean, it's just
Uh,
80s.
yeah, I don't know
Talk
what.
about shoulder pads. The dude's shoulder pads were like all the way over there.
There's almost a
Uh,
Rocketeer element, I feel, that I don't
with the shades,
understand. Yeah. Mm.
I'm gonna give it a week just because he existed and then died and then I don't know. There are
Yeah.
other characters, other villains who control toys that I really enjoy more than this character. So like on that basis alone, for me, it's a week.
Agreed.
Um, And then let's see, I think that's about it. Things to look forward to in the coming volume. We will get a couple of character introductions that I don't think you know, but I know, because they have one of the craziest like character dynamics in Titans canon. And then we get Blackfire, if I'm remembering correctly. So there's something to definitely be excited for there. James, where can we find you?
I am at GeekyJP on Instagram, and I am also Proletary Thought on Twitter.
I was like wondering how to pronounce that, but there you go. You can find me at Joe Pride Cosplay on Instagram and Joe Pride Art and Cosplay on Twitter. This is a monthly podcast, so tune in next month. I'm trying to get us on Spotify as long as I can edit both the video and the audio at the same time. So look out for that Spotify link in the future, and check us out on Titans Together Pod, where we both share the account and message us like, who was your favorite outfit, or how much did you hate Dayton's superhero design, because we definitely were not a fan. Mm-hmm. But until then, we will see you next month. Bye.
Bye.
And then cut.